Okay, so this is the counting of the Omer, Sphira to Omer. We're in the second week now. We're starting the second week of Gevurah. So this is Chesed Gevurah. So Chesed, loving kindness, in Gevurah, which is like strict justice or judgment, or strength. But it reminds me of a concept that whenever Hashem, whenever the creator of the universe does something, has to do something for somebody, like the punishment or something like that, it's tempered with chesed, or loving kindness, or with mercy, or something like that. So a lot of times you can see this. People with families tend to see this when they're they have a holiday off of work or something like that, and their child gets sick. So that child becoming sick was a type of gevurah for that, or din for that family. And ultimately, it was tempered with mercy, because that person was already off work. Like, let's say they're on vacation, getting vacation pay or something like that. Whereas it could have been where they had to take off time off of work and stuff like that, and they lose money and all kinds of things like that. It becomes a hardship. So anytime something happens to us, we have to remember that every time, it's tempered with a bit of mercy. And the one thing you can keep in mind is that, like, things could always be worse. They always could be worse, but they are tempered with mercy. So anyway, I'll continue here. Start this. This is no, but with love. That is the chesed of Gevurah. So the love that comes in the power of severity. So it is hard for us to relate this kind of love, but it's important to understand and practice it nonetheless. Our sages explain that the right side, chesed, pulls you towards something, while the left side, Gevurah, has the power to push away. So chesed is a love that can bring us closer, while Gevurah is a power of severity that pushes things apart. So how can we relate this balancing act between chesed and Gevurah? Is to understand that we cannot say yes to everything. Saying yes too often can lead to suffering for both ourselves and the person we are saying yes to. So we must find a healthy balance between being generous with our love, expressing it through chesed, and exercising restraint with our severity, in line with Gevurah. The power of Gevurah is the power to negate or deny, not necessarily in a negative way. For instance, if you have a box of chocolates in front of you and you have one piece, then another, it might be wise by the 22nd piece to exercise restraint with Gevurah and say no. So Gevurah is the power to cut out or take away as a means of protection. In Hebrew, it's called lishlol, to cut. So when one says no in such situations, it is not seen as a negative thing, but rather as an act of care and consideration. So saying no can prevent someone from making bad decisions and instead help lead them towards better options in the long run. So why is it a positive thing for you? You may feel like it's preventing you from doing something, but in reality it could be helping you. So in Hebrew, this is known as lahativ imach, an act done for someone's benefit. When someone stops you from doing something that could cause harm or has a negative outcome, it's not meant to punish you. Rather, it's out of care and concern for your well-being. Gevurah implies that the ultimate goal is always to help rather than to hinder or punish. So after a week of chesed, the concept of love, we are now taking a 180-degree detour and transitioning to Gevurah, severity, din, judgment. And we begin with chesed of Gevurah, so which is love that motivates you to stop something that may be bad for you. So saying no can be hard when it comes to somebody you care about, such as a child or a spouse, but understanding Gevurah can help you see it as an act of love intended for their good in the long run. So sometimes on Shabbat, we have guests that we love and want to spoil, so we put a lot of wine on the table, but that might not always be the best thing to do. Saying no can be hard, but it is an act of love intended to protect them from harm. In this case, embarrassing themselves or waking up with a hangover. By restricting their intake, you are ultimately doing them a favor. So this kind of Gevurah acknowledges that our ultimate goal is always to support well-being. Taking something away from you that feels good for you can be difficult, but through the motive of chesed of Gevurah, it becomes possible. The engine that will allow you to do such a thing lies within yourself, understanding what needs to be taken away and acknowledging that it will ultimately benefit you in the long run. Although this process may not always be easy, it is essential because letting go and doing whatever you want can have consequences. The ultimate chesed of Gevurah is with ourselves. It's very easy to come and say, I have kids, I need to educate them. It's not good to eat too much chocolate. It's not good to be in front of the computer too much. That's between another person and me, but we want to take it to the next level. How about me and myself? when there is no one around, just me and myself and I can eat that whole box of cookies. Where's the restriction? So there has to be some chesed of Gevurah to say this is not good for me. This is not healthy for me. I'll gain weight. I'll have a stomach ache. I'll ruin my teeth, whatever it is. So again, chesed of Gevurah is the power of love that motivates us to say no. If you know how to nourish this midah, you can take control of yourselves and your desires and urges. You'll recognize when it's time to say no. I've had enough. I don't need another one. I'll wait for another day. This sephira is very powerful and needs to be nurtured and refined. So most people don't know how to say no to themselves. They lack control over their desires, whether it's something small like food or something bigger like spending way too much time on social media. So seeing the same post and videos repeatedly, very few know when to stop and move on. Reading the news and watching cats dance is all well and good, but it's important to be able to call it quits at some time. We must refine our chesed of Gevurah in order to break free from the bondage of our desires. Knowing when to say no is essential if we really care about someone or something. We must have the discipline to draw a line and recognize when enough is enough. When we love something, we must be aware that sometimes it is right and good to say no. It is important to understand when this should happen, whether between two people or within ourselves. This chesed of Gevurah teaches us how to deny, stop, and restrict out of love and not to punish or control someone. The severity of our actions comes from a place of love, and restriction is simply a reaction to that love. So another way of looking at it is through the concept of hatzvat gevulot, place boundaries and restrictions in our lives. This gives us structure and meaning. Just like governments, laws, courthouses, even our homes all have rules to abide by. Without these restrictions, chaos would ensue. Gevurah of Chesed teaches us when to set boundaries or restrictions. This is not a way of dampening love, but instead of allowing love to flow freely. The ultimate abundance of love comes from knowing when and how to place limits, ensuring that love does not become destructive. The boundaries that we set act like a vessel to hold the light of abundance. Without this vessel, the energy of Shefa, or the abundance, downflow of abundance, are not useful to us. From a Kabbalistic perspective, in the beginning, God shone in infinite light, but nothing was able to contain it. Thus, creation had no benefit from it. So that is why borders and restrictions were created, so that the ultimate light could be contained and bring benefit to creation. In today's world, it can be tempting to collect things we love. Unfortunately, this is not always coming from love. One example of this is the desire to have exotic animals in one's house. Although it may be pleasant to see and hear them, confining such animals to a cage that is not their natural habitat is not loving or kind. The right thing to do would be appreciate the beauty of these creatures without taking them away from their homes and families. So love is often thought as an area free from restrictions, but the truth is quite different. By setting boundaries and rules within a loving relationship, it has the potential to become more profound and meaningful. The Kabbalistic concept of ahavat emet speaks to this power. So true love requires restriction in order to become stronger. Ultimately, putting borders and regulations in place to help cultivate a deeper connection between two people. We all have rules within our relationships and spaces where we have mashpia, influence, whether it be with a partner, a child, or a friend. Setting boundaries and restrictions around these relationships is key for their success at times. Saying no to certain requests can pave the way for greater growth and understanding. It can provide us with the opportunity to identify when we are able to give more and when boundaries would be set. This boundary setting helps foster an environment of trust and safe connections between us and those we care about, especially in important relationships like marriage or parenting. As an educator, it is also important to know when to draw the line and say no. For instance, if a student were to ask to learn 10 hours a day, saying no may be in their best interest. Similarly, if a student takes constant interruptions in a class by asking too many questions, it will be beneficial to them in the class to ask them to write down their questions and address it later. This also allows educators to give our full attention in delivery of their message without any disruptions. So we are trying to paint the picture of when and in what situations you should pull the no card. You want to examine your surroundings before pulling out the no card. It should be done from a place of benefit rather than anger or frustration, and ask yourself if it's better to say yes or no in that situation. So finding the right time to say no is important in building and maintaining healthy relationships. And I want to point out that most of the time whenever people have that, saying yes or no to a situation, we take it as a gut feeling. So if our gut feelings, if we're making the wrong decisions constantly on whether, it's a yes or no, then we need to start working on that more distinctly and paying more attention to why we have that gut feeling, okay? Or jumping to assess that it's yes or no, right? So it can prevent us from being taken advantage of or misused. So practically speaking, we need to be aware of the relationships in our life where we feel we are constantly saying yes. By knowing when to say no, it allows us to take control of a situation and draw healthy boundaries for ourselves and those around us. Take the time to identify those moments when you start overindulging and figure out what steps need to be taken in order to say no. So make sure you set clear boundaries and goals for yourself. This will help ensure that your actions don't have a negative impact on other aspects of your life. Saying no can be hard, but it is essential in achieving success in a balanced life. We've all experienced it at some point, tired from a long day and wanting nothing more than to retire to bed, yet lacking the resolve to say no, or from an afternoon snack gone wrong. And we find ourselves reaching for another cookie or coffee after knowing full well that our body doesn't need anymore. But saying no isn't just something we do and other people in our lives. It's also something we should be doing with ourselves. Putting out the card of self-discipline can help us fight most of our desires and inclinations. We understand just how hard it can be to resist temptation at times, but by learning to practice Chesed of Gevurah, loving kindness and strict justice, a combination of love and restrictions, we can have the strength to turn these desires away and become better, healthier people in the process.